Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Career Lab. I am your host, George Miller, and I am here almost every week to help you take the next step in your career. A way that I approach career development is really about building relationships. At a certain point in your career, it is the people who you know, your relationships with them that really matter. And communication skills are at the heart of building strong relationships. So I invite any questions career related are great. Anything from your resume to interviewing, to managing, to looking at your purpose in your career, looking at getting clarity for yourself about your next steps. Anything in that direction is fantastic, because when you look at it, it all comes down to emotional intelligence. It all comes down to communicating. Communicating yourself via resume, via interview, and via meetings with your team. Your career development is incredibly dependent on how you are with yourself and how you are with others. So I'm going to be talking about emotional intelligence in the body, about the basics of emotional intelligence, starting with what you're feeling, how being aware of that is your competitive edge. But I invite you to ask any questions. You don't have to stay on this topic. I will probably tie it back to emotional intelligence. So I invite any questions, and there's a few ways you can do this. You can jump in here directly on Zoom. I love it when you do that. It's a lot of fun for me. But if you can't, or if you want to remain anonymous, then just type your questions into the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to your questions that way. And when I'm responding to your questions in the comment section, let me know if I'm going off topic. If I'm not answering your question, just let me know and I'll get back on track with you. So you can type your questions in at any point in time. I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence in the body and why this is so important. So when I am going into a meeting, when I am going into an interview, when I am making a resume, if I am avoiding the feelings that I'm experiencing in the moment, then I am not as sharp and clear as I could be. I will not see the opportunities that I could see. And I won't be able to pick up on other people's feelings. I won't be able to pick up on the signals that other people are giving me. It's a common thing. I was just in a meeting where somebody mentioned that there's somebody that they don't get along with, and they were kind of confused by this. They're like, I clearly it would benefit them to be on my good side. So I don't understand why they're not nicer to me. And what I realized was they think that they are showing up in the way that the other person wants. So they're not aware that they're rubbing the person the wrong way. Like, why would anybody do that? Most of the time. Sure, sometimes you want to, I don't know. Sometimes you got it out for somebody and you'll let them know that. But this is, we're talking about business meetings here. And so what we got to in the conversation was this person who treats you poorly doesn't know they're treating you poorly. And at this point in your relationship, they are unaware of what they're feeling, and you're unaware of what you're feeling. So as we started to dig into it, then, okay, so you feel angry, you feel irritated at how this person treats you. And then underneath that irritation is hurt and even fear of, well, why would I, if you're treating me this way, then why would I refer you to other people? Obviously, I'm not going to. So we're going to be at an impasse unless we work through this. And then the other person doesn't realize that they're also feeling irritated, angry, afraid, and hurt. And so they're coming in trying to overperform. And their method of overperforming is kind of being a know-it-all. And it not so subtly one-upping, but it's like they're unaware that they're doing it. And as this person gets more in touch with the irritation and especially the fear, once they start recognizing, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was so afraid of people kind of who are in this position of power or this authority. Wow, I didn't realize I was so afraid. And my knee-jerk response is to be overly aggressive out of a sense of self-preservation. And I'm ultimately pushing this person away. I'm saying, like, I don't need you, I don't want you, like, stay out of my life. But I'm even kind of irritated that if I'm gonna grow in my business, I need them. So we can start to unpack all kinds of things here, but it starts with, if I am unwilling to feel my own fear, hurt, and anger in my body, then I will refuse to do that while I'm interacting with somebody. So emotional intelligence, it is a body thing. Like, my feelings are happening in here. I do this exercise with people where I'll ask them, point to yourself. I've had like 1 or 2 people do this. The 99% other people, point here. So there's a sense of self, and it's very feeling, has a lot to do with feelings. Now, if we really take it to the extreme, we find that we are not our thoughts and we are not our feelings. We're more than that. Some people say we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but a foundational thing in this human experience is our emotions. In fact, our thoughts bubble up from our emotions. And so the more that I can go into my body, and you may be hearing the term somatic, that's in the body. What am I feeling? What are the sensations? So another way to look at this is, if I can change how I feel, and it's that it doesn't come necessarily from thinking it through. I can change how I feel simply by what I do with my body. This is one of the reasons I go into the lake every morning. This is a reason why I bike a lot more than drive, is because it gets me in my body. So I'm just automatically more in touch with my feelings. My sense of self is awake. There's an aliveness to me, and I can do this yoga pose for 2 minutes, where I can't see my thumbs, but so like this. Do that, or do Wonder Woman pose, Superman pose. Do that, 2 minutes, and it will change how I'm experiencing myself. and I will have a different thought pattern because I changed what's going on in my body. So this is incredibly powerful. Oh, cool. We're getting some comments here. I'll take a look at these in a moment. Thank you for putting this in. I'd love to dig in on this. I wanted to make a point about 𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸, who in her research shows that if you've got an interview, better than cramming in the morning and studying one more thing or, preparing that way on a computer, it's better to go for a run. And it's even better if you can go for a run where there's roots and a hill and things, and it's not just a straight sidewalk, so that your body is lighting up in all kinds of ways and your brain is now active. She calls the body the throne. And so if my throne is in good shape, my throne is alive and active, then it sets my brain up to be more expansive, to be more creative. Okay, cool. So we're getting some comments here. Embodying emotional intelligence opens new pathways for authentic leadership, especially under pressure. Let's embrace this growth. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. I would love to hear a way that you have done that recently, or a way that you're looking to, a way that you would like to embody more emotional intelligence. And if you have a conversation, if you have something coming up where you're going to be under pressure, one of the things that I was just working on a client with around this is they have a big meeting coming up where it's going to be intense. They have a course that they would like to help the company go in, and they know that there's going to be opposition. And so they could spend all their time just preparing for that meeting, or they can start having those uncomfortable conversations in their daily life. So they can start building that muscle of staying present, staying with their feelings under pressure. And we have these opportunities in our life all the time with our spouses, with our kids, with our neighbors, with our friends, with coworkers. There's all kinds of ways to expand my behavior by being more aware of my emotions. So I'd love to hear if you've got a question about an upcoming meeting or a spot that you see yourself being under pressure, and how you might strategize to lean into your feelings more, to expand your capacity to be present and conscious in that meeting. And we've got another comment here. This body-based approach really does give leadership teams an edge that's hard to replicate through traditional methods alone. Oh, I'd love to hear more about that. What do you mean by traditional methods alone? There's all kinds of ways that you can invite people into their bodies to get more present at work, in meetings. There's even things like I've worked with some people who they decide that the first few minutes of the meeting, while everybody's kind of showing up, is just open talking about whatever happened that weekend, just getting to know people more, and that people relax more in that state, and the meeting goes a lot better. Sometimes people, if they're on a on a team that's really into this kind of thing, they will meditate together, or they'll take a few moments, just a few moments, just to ground and center themselves. And totally, that kind of thing works great. And if you're in an environment where that's not part of the culture, well, you get to do it. You get to do it on your own, in your own way. You can go into a meeting, allow yourself to be present with whatever you're feeling, and notice the impact that will have. And that's an important thing, is to be aware of, is to expect to get different results, and then to keep track of the different results and celebrate them. Too often we can just notice where we're lacking things and where mistakes are happening. So another thing I want to tie in is the work of 𝐬𝐨𝐦𝐚𝐬𝐿, who wrote My Grandmother's Hands. And we found that when all of us to some degree have various types of trauma, and when I say that word, I don't want it to, get kind of blown out of proportion. I broke my leg a couple times when I was a kid. That's a trauma. I was the youngest child in my family, so there's just ways that I was interacted with that are like little bits of trauma or ouchies, or however you want to look at it. So I am set that way then, and when I enter into a space and I enter into a room with a certain kind of group of people, I'm going to have a lot of feelings that just come up, that are just part of me, and the emotional template that I have around people who remind me of my family growing up, or remind me of the church I grew up in, or the school, or whatever. And so much of my programming has been to shut that off and to say, yeah, okay, get over it. Don't feel that anymore. I don't want to ever feel that way again. And the problem with that is that then I'm also shutting off my ability to see more of what's happening right in front of me. And so by allowing myself to feel the room, feel what my body feels like in this space, or whatever space I'm in, it helps me adjust and be more conscious and more effective in that environment. I love that book, My Grandmother's Hands, because throughout the entire thing, he's having you do exercises and taking note of the space that you're in. And the impacts are huge. These subtle little changes that we can make in our day-to-day living. So another key thinker in this area is van der Kolk, around the body keeps the score. So this suppressed stress, it rewires us for reactivity, disconnection, again, like what I was talking about at the beginning, of trying to push somebody away, like unconsciously, because that's what I learned to do in some kind of a way growing up. I learned to push things away that were uncomfortable. So if I allow myself to just be conscious with that discomfort in the here and now, then I don't have to keep avoiding it. If I'm willing to be present with the irritation and the hurt and the fear that I'm having about interacting with this one person who's treating me a certain kind of way, then I don't have to avoid them. I can just let myself notice the frustration, the hurt, and the concern. And then I even that allows me to have access to more effective language with whoever this person is. Then I can notice, wow, I notice I feel a lot of fear around them. That's interesting. So I wonder what it would look like for me to kind of communicate that. Like, I noticed that I feel I'm kind of like on my heels a little bit. And I noticed that you're often saying things um like I'll say something and then you say something that kind of discounts what I just said. I know I feel hurt about that. What's going on? And you might not that you have to adjust how you do this with whoever it is you're talking to. But it's so different than what we so often do, which is um, just avoiding somebody altogether, and or kind of getting combative and going back and forth and kind of being in an irritated state and trying to make a point that's just not getting through. And so if I allow myself to be with the hurt and the fear underneath the irritation, then it's not going to be as big of a deal to me to just say, I'm kind of felt a little hurt there when I said something and it's like you make a point of kind of dismissing whatever it is I just said. And what am I supposed to do with that? You see how that it might be uncomfortable, but it brings me and invites somebody else to the here and now. Invite somebody to a clear conversation. I've had people say, thanks for saying that. I didn't realize I was doing that. And I kind of, I get that. I've gotten a lot of people say, my wife tells me that. Huh. so, so that's a way to play with this is just, and the cool thing again about today's topic of the body, about emotional intelligence, being aware of the emotions in your body, is that as you are aware of what you're feeling, you don't have to defend against it. You can use it as a way to connect. So thank you for these comments earlier. I want to open it up to everybody and say, if you have any questions, and reminder, you don't have to ask a question that has to do specifically with this topic. You can ask any question about your resume, your interview process, managing your team, any of these things, anything that's on your heart, go ahead and type it into the comment section, and I'll do my best to address your question. I'll do my best to answer your question. Just go ahead and type it into the chat. So I'll start closing out. If I don't get any more questions, then I will take it that this has been helpful in getting you some clarity today. And I want to say too that if you have some questions, but you don't want to bring it in here online, go ahead and set up a one-to-one with me. I love meeting with people and talking for 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes I'm able to help kind of provide clarity for your next steps. And if a coaching relationship, something that makes sense, then we can set up a longer time. We can set up a coaching relationship, look at what a package might look like for you. And I invite you into that. And another thing that I have not, and this is all stuff that I've been doing on Instagram. I haven't even thought to bring it here on LinkedIn, is breathwork group. So my wife and I are hosting breathwork groups once a month. Once a month, we are doing these Wednesday evenings. So I'll go ahead and throw that into the chat as well when I'm able to get it. I may have to put that in later. So anyway, there's ways to engage with me one-on-one Wednesdays here in Career Lab, or we can also look at group coaching. I run in several group coaching programs, and those are really fun because talk about having an embodied experience. That those will put you out of your comfort zone and you will grow quite a bit there, where everybody in the group is developing a new behavior. And so everyone's taking risks together. That's a lot of fun. So go ahead and check that out. That's the EQ intensive. We are beginning the next cohort next Tuesday evening. So that's quite a treat. So what I want to start to close out with is that I think, so I just had this interaction where I saw something come in with my bank. I didn't understand it. And then I got on the phone and I'm talking to a robot, and then that robot puts me through to another robot, and then I'm on hold and yada yada. And it was just taking up so much time. And I was getting angrier and angrier. And it was pretty horrible. Like I was like, I don't ever want to do this again. It took, I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes. And then I still didn't get my question resolved. And I was really angry. It like, ruined my day. So I looked at it and I was like, what's going on here? I was like, well, part of it, I feel hurt and afraid for 15 to 20 minutes while I'm interacting with these robots, these chat bots and whatever. And it's just annoying. Like this is not a way that I want to spend 20 minutes of my day. And so I decided that I'm just going to go to the bank. And it took about the same time. I was biking back from somewhere. I was like, oh yeah, just stopped at the bank, go in, talk to a human being, see somebody face to face. And they answered my question in like 5 minutes. So it actually took less time to do the in-person thing for me. Now, there might be people who are really good at working with chat bots and robots and all that. Maybe. Cool. I should hire you. But the point that I'm teeing up here is that we are emotional creatures. Our emotions really drive us in profound ways. And so as much as artificial intelligence is a powerful tool and is changing the way we do things, I think that we are going to have more and more hunger for in-person connection, and that we will start identifying ways that we need to be together and be aware of what's happening in our bodies, etc. That this is just going to get more important. That as AI increases, that it will require of humans more and more emotional finesse, more and more awareness, and that people with high EQ are going to become more and more important in this realm. And it's already been, it's been what, 25 years since the Harvard Business Review article about emotional intelligence, and as companies are working with CEOs, hiring a new CEO, whatever, they referred back to that article more than any other article in the Harvard Business Review. That's how important emotional intelligence is in leadership. And as there's more and more robots, well, that's going to mean that there's more and more need for what we think of as leadership, of being able to influence. Oh, cool. I've got a great question here. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So how do you start cultivating somatic awareness if you've spent most of your leadership journey focused on mindset and strategy? Oh, cool. That's a fantastic question. Is there a simple daily practice you'd recommend to begin grounding in presence? Yes. Yes. I will give you the practice that I work on daily. This is in it, and I'll talk a little bit about it because it's a profound shift in how we think of feelings. So if you spend most of your time focused on mindset and strategy, one of the issues that I have with a lot of mindset coaching and things like The Secret, where you just focus on what you want, you meditate on that, and then you're supposed to manifest it, that doesn't take into account all of our limiting beliefs. And so if I meditate on something that I want, say, I want $1 million. I want $1 million. I want $1 million. I want $1 billion. I want $1 billion. So if I'm doing that, and so I'm trying to change my mindset that way. And again, I'm just stabbing here. I don't know if this was the kind of mindset coach that you're talking about, but what happens then is that I use my unconscious mind uses the fact that I don't have the thing that I think I want. And then I start to say to myself, see, you'll never get that. See, if you had that, then you'd be okay. See? And that it's not sustainable. You know, there are some people who are able to really drive themselves forward with that kind of I'll say it's scarcity thinking. But I just, you know, that if that worked, there'd be a lot more people with a lot more money. It just doesn't work. So what I look at, what's so important about this somatic, this embodiment of emotions, is that I accept whatever it is that I'm feeling. And I focus on that. I don't try to change what I'm feeling. I just notice what I'm feeling. And to do that, I often have to notice the limiting beliefs that I have about core feelings. So here's the exercise. I'm taking a long time to get to it, so thanks for sticking with me. The exercise is to keep track of fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy. Are there more emotions than that? Absolutely. But it's helpful to have a shorthand for this, and all other feelings can boil down into these 5 core feelings. You know, people talk about, well, what about guilt? Well, I see guilt as a combination of hurt and fear and anger turned inward. And so it's more helpful to me to be aware of the fear, hurt, and anger and see if, you know, in some ways, like I should feel guilty about something. If I did something wrong, then yeah, it's helpful for me to have some anger towards myself. And I can say, okay, I'm going to stop being angry at myself. I'm going to go address this. You know, I'm going to talk to the person I need to talk to and say, you know, I'm sorry about that. You know, I'm embarrassed about how I was in that interaction. You know, my fault. Sorry about it. You know, and then I can move on. But right there, you know, so notice the finer distinctions that I'm using when around anger. I'm not just continuing to beat myself up about making a mistake. I'm acknowledging the mistake and I'm learning from it. And if I'm unwilling to feel the hurt and the fear associated with guilt, if I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's too scary, I can't go apologize to somebody, I can't do that. No, that's too scary. That, you know, they're going to just completely hit me while I'm down then. You know, and if I'm unwilling to feel the fear in that, well, then I'm going to come up with all kinds of excuses to not have that conversation. I'm going to come up with all kinds of reasons why it's not going to be good for me. And, you know, I'm not, it's not and at that point, I'm not making it about the relationship. I'm making it out of a, you know, probably out of whack sense of self-preservation. Sometimes that makes sense, but most of the time it doesn't. So the practice I recommend you do is to keep track of feelings: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. Get out a notepad or a sticky note, like sticky notes I got around me. Just write fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. And then make little tick marks throughout the day. When you come out of a meeting, what did I feel in that meeting? Which of these core feelings did I notice? And as you do that, you'll start to be more conscious of what's going on inside your body. And then your mindset will begin to expand. And your strategy, you will be better at being with a big goal, some strategy that's uncomfortable, because you won't be trying to avoid the fear of that strategy. You'll just, yeah, it's a big, I'm taking some big risks here. Yeah. Like, yeah, I feel afraid about it. That's cool. I mean, I'm all right with that. I'm choosing this. So you start to shift your relationship with the feelings happening in your body simply by being aware of them. There's research on this, the name it to tame it. As you name whatever it is that you're feeling, it calms down your amygdala. It gets your frontal lobe re-engaged and has your visionary executive functioning working. And if you aren't with your feelings, then you're not visioning. Your executive functioning isn't working as well. You're spending a lot of energy trying to resist what's happening around you. So I hope that helps sense. When you notice a feeling that's especially uncomfortable, like shame or overwhelm, do you stay with it, or is there a point where you pivot into action? Good question. Yeah. Well, so I love tying things back to the ice water. I feel afraid, and my system in all kinds of ways is overwhelmed when I go into ice water. And then at a certain point, I'm feeling more and more afraid, and I start to say, you know what, I think it's time to go out. Like, it's that basic. And then I move into action. I pivot into action when it's time to. Now, but for a practice, okay, yeah, you're asking about a practice. I would recommend, if you're feeling shame, then to let yourself feel that shame in an environment where you can really be conscious of what's going on, where you can explore memories or what's coming up around the shame thing. And then you'll start to notice the finer increments of, oh, I feel afraid about being rejected. I feel hurt, and I notice this belief that this is who I am, that I really don't matter. So I have an immense amount of shame around this. And I'm kind of constantly criticizing myself. Oh, wow. Okay. So you stay with that so you get more clarity about it. And then you let your feelings, you let the ideas come to you while you're present in those feelings of, like, what I'd really like is since I have this, I'm getting to the sense that, like, I have this deep belief that I don't matter. I just have this deep sense of shame. What would it look like if I allowed myself to matter? What would mattering look like for me? And Ken, is that an action? What's a simple action I can take? Is there a way that I can get some affirmation? What happens if I ask somebody for a compliment. This happens for me after every speaking event that I do so far. I feel really vulnerable afterwards, and I often have a sense of shame and overwhelm. Like, I just like was so exposed, and I'm aware of all the mistakes I made. I'm aware of how much more I wanted to do. I'm aware of all of that. I can be so aware of the gap in my development. And so it's good for me to know that about myself. And then where I pivot is I choose to get affirmation. I choose to connect with somebody that I know is going to tell me good job. And in that space after a speaking event, I don't want critical feedback then. Nope. I will take the critical feedback later. I'll take it at least 24 hours later. Because I'm already in such a space that I'm vulnerable. I'm so likely to go to be hard on myself. I mean, I love Bono from U2, and he was talking about this, after a show. He's always kind of out of it and trying to come down without being too hard on himself and all that. And so that's just it's a thing to be aware of. So I hope this is helping you with it. It's not an or. When I notice a feeling that's especially uncomfortable, like shame or overwhelm, do I stay with it? Or is there a point where you pivot into action? It's both. It's a skill to be more conscious while with the shame and overwhelm. And then while I'm allowing myself to be with those feelings, then I will come up with better solutions. And a better solution may be turning to somebody and saying, hey, I need help. God, I'm being so hard on myself right now. I just got to say it and, talk it through. Like, that might be the point that you pivot and go into action. Often trying to rush into action that hasn't worked well in the past, that can be a pattern. It's like if I'm feeling shame and overwhelm, and then I may have a self-destructive pattern of trying to get away from feeling that. And so I take all this action that then doesn't really serve. I've been working this one for years with coaching. One of the biggest mistakes I make, and I still make it, is at the end of a coaching session, I try to get in too much. It's like I see some possibilities, and I'll share something that doesn't really go well, and it's my own sense of shame and overwhelm in this interaction. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the other person. So, now that I know that about myself, I have strategies on how to close out a session so that I don't do that, and certainly do it a lot less. And so it's a both and. I hope that's helpful. Let me know if that's answering your question. Again, two great questions. How do you start cultivating somatic awareness if you've spent most of your leadership journey focused on mindset and strategy? Is there a simple daily practice you'd recommend to begin grounding into presence? That's naming feelings. And there's more things that come after that, but I find that that's a particularly powerful exercise, is simply being aware of core feelings: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. And we could throw a link to a webinar I did on this years ago, where I go on a much deeper dive into emotional intelligence, the core feelings, the function of those core feelings, etc. So we'll see if we can throw that in there for you. So it's simple. It's almost too simple. Like, I think, I suspect honestly that most of you listening won't actually practice this, because it's almost like, how could this possibly do anything for me? It's too easy. Well, give it a try and see, but I doubt you will. That's how we are so programmed to avoid fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy, that we will come up with all kinds of excuses to not simply notice them throughout the day. So it's actually a bigger challenge, I think, than you may realize. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you. It's a nice compliment. How grounded and human my guidance is. That's a really sweet compliment. Thank you. So then the follow-up question there was, when you notice feeling something that's especially uncomfortable, like shame or overwhelm, do you stay with it, or is there a point where you pivot into action? At some point, you'll pivot into action, but for starters, I would say just be more in touch with the shame and the overwhelm. See if you can love yourself in the shame and the overwhelm. And I think, actually, I'm going to take this to a cosmic level here. I think that's really sweet, is if I look at all of the things that I'd love to do in life, I'm not good enough. A core limiting belief is I'm not good enough. And, there's a lot of ways that then I can use that core limiting belief of I'm not good enough. And so why should I bother? Right. But that's not what I mean in talking about I'm not good enough. It's more of my attitude about not being good enough, to say, I'm not good enough. It's true for everything that I want to do in life. And I want world peace, right? I want world peace, a yacht, a spaceship, a castle, and a pet dragon, like whatever. I'm kind of being silly, but like, there's a lot of things that I want. There's a lot of things I'd like to create. I'd like to go on tour again. And the truth is that as a human, I've got limitations. And I think it's especially profound to allow myself to be human, to recognize I'm not good enough, and then to even say, you know what, there's a lot of things I don't care that I'm not good enough at. Fine. I don't even know that I want to be. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I can be fine with not being good enough in some ways. And then as I do that, it's like, well, what are the things I really care about? What are the things that I don't feel that way? A recorded song, like a finished product for me, I mean, I put a lot into that. I care a great deal about that. So yeah, as I allow myself to be with these limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough, totally, nobody is, and I can allow myself to be with the fears of that, then the fears can be a gift that guide me. Say, I'm not good enough. I need help. Who do I need to talk to? Yeah, I feel afraid calling this person up. And that's okay. It's fine that I feel afraid. No big deal. I don't even need to feel confident. I can still do the thing. Courage. I don't think anybody who's courageous, feels good while they're being courageous. Maybe they do. I don't know, but I sure don't. It's not until after my courageous act that I feel confident and feel the joy. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you for the compliment. Oh yeah, I got to get going here. So yeah, take a look at some of these links. Take the personality assessment that will show you your personality style and help you communicate more effectively with other personality styles. So take a look at that. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining in. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And I will be back next week. Take care and set up a time to talk with me. Bye-bye.